Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the sixth and final webinar of this first series of Encore webinars. These webinars are sponsored by the Schlegel UW Research Institute for Aging and Conrad Grebel University College here in Waterloo, Ontario, Canada, and also by the Centre for Aging and Pastoral Studies in Canberra, Australia. My name's Jane Kipfer, and I'm here in Waterloo, and my co-host is Sally Mordyke in Australia. These webinars have their origins in the 10th International Conference on Aging and Spirituality that was held last June here in Waterloo. After the conference, we heard the desire to repeat some of the presentations so that more people could benefit and join in our conversation. So this is our attempt to share the conference further. We're glad that you could join us. Yes, we are recording, and you will be sent a link to access the video as well as the slides and a synopsis of the chat. So today we have Kathryn Mannix here to bring us her workshop on listening skills. Kathryn trained and worked as a palliative care physician in the UK for 30 years, caring for patients in hospitals, at home, and in hospice facilities. She's a trained cognitive behavioral therapist, and she combined her CBT and palliative care interests to develop CBT clinics for palliative care patients and a CBT first aid skills training program for staff. She took early retirement in 2016 to work toward better public understanding and discussion of dying. Her campaigning work includes writing, broadcasting, and public speaking. Her first book, With the End in Mind, was a Times Thought Book of the Year. And her latest book, Listen, How to Find the Words for Tender Conversations, has been widely adopted by counselors, coaches, and chaplaincy workers as a guide to working alongside people facing adversity and challenge. I've read both of her books and highly recommend them. While Kathryn lives in the countryside with her husband and a small flock of hens, she is currently in a hotel room in London, England, after having spent the day traveling. It's 10 p.m. where she is, and we are so grateful that she's spending this time with us before calling it a night. So welcome, Kathryn. Thank you in advance for bringing us this webinar that you originally led as a half-day workshop at our international conference. I'll soon turn the floor over to you, but first, just to remind everyone to please keep your microphone muted while you're listening, and we'll save some time for questions and for conversation at the end. Kathryn, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you, Sally. People could say you see me laughing, but I don't know whether you could all see Sally. Maybe she's pinned, waving my books around, which is why I was giggling as Jane was talking there. I didn't mean to look disrespectful to the chair. It's so lovely to be with you all. Welcome to my hotel room here in London. Actually, this is a really interesting hotel. It's run by the Methodist Church, and they plough the profits into supporting students from the developing world to study in England. So part of the building is a hall of residence, and the restaurant is a shared facility where hotel guests pay full price, and that subsidizes the price of the meals for the students. Isn't that amazing? So anyway, that's where I am. And I've got a cup of tea because obviously I'm in England and it's very late at night, so it's decaffeinated tea. And we're going to talk a little bit about cognitive therapy, and we're going to talk a little bit about the listening skills that underpin cognitive therapy and, in fact, all of our practice in aged care, pastoral care, palliative care, in supporting vulnerable people, supporting our family, our friends, the people who might be training or supervising. Listening is a key skill. So I've got a set of slides which I'm going to put on and off as we go along. Oh, so please may I be allowed to share my screen, whoever is making those things possible. I think it's Margaret behind the Conrad Gradle screen.
You should have
allow that
permission
info.
now.
Okay,
Yes.
let's give it a go. Oh, look, it's happening. Hooray. And it's going to come in the middle of the presentation, which isn't quite what I planned. Here we are. Listening skills for end of life care, because that's what I do. So before we start, I want to do a little group warning. Sounds like a trigger warning, doesn't it? This is going to be partly me talking, and it's going to be partly you giving me feedback about what I'm saying so that I can choose the direction that we're going in. And that means that I need you to join in, and you can probably do that best because there are so many of us. It's fantastic. Nearly got 100 people here now. If you would join in by putting comments that we're looking for in the chat, that would be really, really helpful. So in order that we can turn this into a safe space where you feel that you can join in, knowing that we're recording it, nobody's going to be asked to say anything that's deep or emotional or personal, I promise you, other than one person who's volunteered to talk about something, and that's already sorted out. But in order to make this a safe space for making comments, asking questions, being curious about something that we all feel we're naturally very good at, which is listening, would you stick in the chat for us now? What are the conditions that you would like us to agree as a group? And I'm going to start that off by saying and taking it as read that what happens in the group and the people who might watch the video afterwards will treat it all with confidentiality and respect. So I'm going to turn on the chat so that I can see it and look at your comments as you're talking about everybody joining in. Now, I'm going to just have a little think about joining in because it might be that you want to speak rather than type, and there are 90 something of us. So Janice already has raised the possibility of crosstalk that makes it difficult. So that non-judgmental listening and empathy, they're really, really important. I want you also to think about your own tendency to contribute. There's a spectrum from doesn't stop talking to doesn't say a thing. And those are not judgmental labels, they are observations of human behavior. If you don't know which end of that continuum you're on, you're almost certainly at the talky end. And the people who don't say very much are thinking. And they don't speak until they've finished the thought and polished it and it's perfect, and then they say it. And their frustration is that the conversation has moved on by then. And it's difficult for them to get their thought in if those of us who are at the talky end, and I'm one of those, don't give them space. So let's also think about, we need the wisdom and the input of those of you who are inclined not to speak until you've fully polished your answer. And we respect that you want to do that. And please don't get left behind. Please do give us your thoughts because they're usually the best thoughts. Because those of us who are at the talky end, we're not polishing our answer before we speak. We're actually thinking aloud. It's not the same process. So don't think we're doing what you're doing, but we're doing it very fast. We're just talking rubbish and we'll cross half of it out. And you will never say you're rubbish because you've already edited before you speak. Okay, that's my introvert extrovert analysis finished. Let's have a look what we've got in the chat. And thanks for joining in, everybody. This is really great. This is what we were hoping would happen. So non-judgmental listening, and what happens here stays here. And being empathic because we're going to create a safe learning space. So we're going to be open, we're going to listen behind the words. We're going to allow for there being silence. So all information is positive. Thank you. That's really, really important. And we will be open, we'll be honest, we'll be aware how much we talk. Sally, you and I, will be an interesting thing to tape. Respectful. Spectrum 5. Gemma, tell me what that means in another moment. Type it in because that's not an expression that I know. Listen with openness and respect. Prefer the coordinators to direct the speakers. Chatters can contribute, but not expect something. Okay, so we'll be careful. Open to the thought of others and respectful of where their comments are coming from. listening out and hearing what isn't said. Yeah, giving us time and space to think for those who think and respond at different speeds. Yeah, try and be half and half. Yes, I try and be half and half too, but I'm not very good at it. And also, yeah, we're not all going to think the same thing. So we are going to respect and be curious and be interested in views that are different from our own views. Okay. Being present. Thanks, Tom. Hearing what isn't said. Okay. Does that feel like a safe space? I think that's a wonderful thing. And it's so much easier to get you to put it in the chat than if we were in a real room. I'd be trying to scribble all that down on a whiteboard, wouldn't I? And we'd be working ever so hard. So thank you very much. And for those of you who are watching it on catch up, the same thing pertains. We're really glad that you want to watch on catch up, and we really trust you to be responsible with things that you will see and hear us saying and doing, and to respect the confidentiality of it. Thank you. So I'm going backwards. That's good. Listening to understand. We're going to talk about using some
How are
skills.
you?
Oh, somebody needs to put their computer onto mute. Can we all just check we're on mute? So we're going to think about some tools from cognitive therapy. And in order to do that, I'm going to need to tell you a little bit about cognitive therapy first, because in the room, there will be people who are experts, there will be people who are complete newbies. So let's assume we're all newbies. Cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, is one of the talking therapies. It's talking therapy for mood disorders like anxiety, depression, obsessive compulsive disorder, things like that. But it's quite a short-term focused psychotherapy. So it's not a very, very long, takes years like some of the analytic psychotherapies might be. It's very problem oriented and goal focused. That doesn't mean that it doesn't go deep, but it starts off where the problem is and gradually works out to find the place, to find maybe the wound that's allowing this situation to be so difficult for this particular person. And it's been widely researched. It's very effective for the mood disorders. But gradually, people are starting to realize that it's also helpful for people who need to deal with situations that impact on their mood but are caused by their physical health. And so now it's developing a role for promoting better coping and also for tolerating symptoms and even reducing symptoms of physical illnesses. And that is how I came to get interested in it. So in physical health practitioners, I've been using full Monty, ordinary cognitive therapy, but in a different setting. And noticed that there are things that we do in cognitive therapy that all of my colleagues in palliative care have fantastic communication skills and could learn to do those things. Because what CBT offers is framework to help people to understand and respond to distress in your daily working life, whether you're a chaplain or a physiotherapist or a nurse or a doctor. There are skills that you can use that help you to be a better, more effective version of the job you're already doing. So this isn't about turning hospice nurses into cognitive therapists or physiotherapists who work in elderly rehab into cognitive therapists. This is to give them an extra set of skills in their toolkit to use as they need to in their current practice. So it's not just about communication skills. It's a way of behaving and it's a way of formulating the difficulty that a person has. So it's not just about the conversation, it's about what happens between the conversations as well. And I was lucky enough to get some research money to develop and investigate whether we really could teach CBT skills to physical health practitioners. Does it make a difference to their practice? Yes, it does. Does it making a difference to their practice make a difference to their patients? Yes, it does. So there's a little bit of research behind this as well. So I want to introduce us all to a model for understanding how human beings tick. And I know it's a little bit after Easter now, but this is the model. And I I'm calling it a hot cross bun because that is what we call it in our training. But one of the reasons that this has to be a confidential, safe space is that you must never, ever, ever tell a real cognitive therapist that I called their module a hot cross bun, because they like to call it 5 areas cognitive model. So promise me, Scout's honour, that you'll tell them that's what I told you to call it. So why do we call it a hot cross bun? Well, this is what the model looks like. It looks like thinking about what is happening in somebody's mind in terms of the thoughts that they're having, and how do those thoughts impact on their emotions, their moods, and on their behaviors, what they do or what they decide not to do, or what they withdraw from doing or postpone doing, and on the bodily sensations that they may have, like pain or breathlessness or being too hot or being too cold. And how do each of those things interact with each other in a very specific time and place? So the 5 areas are the very specific time and place, which I'm calling the environment there, and then thoughts, emotions, behaviors, and bodily sensations. Now, we are going to do a little experiment together now. And Margaret, it would be really helpful if we could have the screen that shows as many people as possible on a single screen, with your cameras on if you can, but some of you mightn't have enough signal to be able to do that. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to invite you all to unmute yourselves.
My goodness.
Thank you. Because what we're all going to do now is we're all going to sing together. I am going to teach you the tune that English children learn to sing the alphabet. And then one by one, because it's too chaotic when we all try and sing together, we're all each going to sing a nursery rhyme. And nobody's going to repeat a nursery rhyme, and we're going to sing it to this tune. Okay, so some of you may know this tune. Start to think about what nursery rhymes you can remember. This is the tune. I'll sing it through and then you join in with me, okay? A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z, U. A, B, C, D, E,
E, F, G, H, I, J,
N, O, P, Q, W, X, Y,
Y,
Z.
Z.
Okay, pretty good, pretty good. So I'm going to go first with my nursery rhyme while you're thinking of yours, and then we'll have another chorus while you get ready. Okay? Mary had a little lamb, its fleece was white as snow, and everywhere the baby went, the lamb was sure to go. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, R, S, T,
Mariposi,
U, V, W, X,
una
Z.
mariposa, mariposi,
Tumbling
Okay, okay. So, do we have any volunteers? So Sally's immediately turned her microphone off. Esther's turned her whole screen off. Okay, right. Thank you. So stand down. Nobody has to sing. It's okay. You can all go back onto mute again now.
You'd have muted me if I sang.
Well, so I'm interested, first of all, and again, stick it in the chat. What just happened? Because I was in a room with 100 professionals on Zoom, and I suggested that they might sing. And then I noticed that some of them were a bit reluctant to turn their microphones on. And I also noticed that there was some giggling. In fact, for a load of professional people, there was quite a lot of giggling. I'm glad you all had your microphones on because I quite enjoyed that bit. So there are probably a couple of people in our room who are quite confident singers. In fact, maybe more than that, because we're a group of people who might be used to singing in church as well. So if you were really disappointed that I didn't ask you to sing just now, stick your hand up. I want to talk to you. Oh, well done. Fantastic. So we've got some singers. So Brenda and then Donna Marie, tell us about what happened for you. If you come off mute and tell us what happened.
For me, I think that I've heard the tune through Sharon Lois and Brown, but I'm not that familiar with the tune, but I thought I was sort of getting it, and I had Jack and Jill in my mind. So I thought I was ready to give it a go. When I saw that you get to the chorus pretty quickly and I get lost when the group is singing, then I'm not sure if I'm on the tune or not.
It's hard, isn't it? Because it's slightly different time because of the time lag for Zoom, which is why Zoom choirs always have to be on mute and every person's singing on their own. But because you were thinking about it, you were getting ready for it. And it sounds as though you felt that you could make a reasonable go of singing Jack and Jill. And then you had some second thoughts as you realized the tune was a bit short and maybe people weren't singing it quite the same way as you. What was going through your mind then?
Not so much that the tune was short. In fact, I thought I could probably get through it, although I wasn't sure that I knew the tune well enough to get through the whole rhyme.
Okay.
But I would pretty soon be rescued by people chiming in with the chorus.
Okay, so you had a thought which was, I've got this tune, and I'm probably going to be okay, and then the chorus will start and that will rescue me. So you had a set of thoughts that were actually quite comforting and fairly confident. Did you feel confident to sing?
Pardon me?
Did you feel confident to sing?
Right now? Or
No,
generally?
then just when you were going through that thought process.
Reasonably. I just thought I might lose the tune before I got to the end of it, or sing some other tune that was in my head that I thought it might be.
Right. So you've got your idea for your song, you feel reasonably confident. You've got a bit of an anxiety, and the thought behind that anxiety is I might lose the tune partway through. And then you've got to kind of answer to your anxiety, which is, but then it'll be the chorus and everybody will rescue me again anyway. So you can see what you were thinking, you can see how your emotions followed with what you were thinking. Thanks, Brenda. Thanks for telling us about that. Donna Marie, what happened for you?
So it's kind of funny how I was thinking of singing Jack and Jill too. And I figured out my Jack and Jill went up the hill kind of a thing. I like singing, but I'm not a public singer. So I was kind of beginning to wonder, how is this going to turn out? And then I got caught up in listening or just trying to hear people singing what they were singing after you started the chorus again. And then I was, oh, this is going to be fun. But that didn't, it didn't stop me from being a tad anxious because I'm also hoarse right now. So how am I going to sing? But I was confident I would be able to get it done, even if your ears popped after I was done. But, yeah. So I was a little anxious, not too anxious. I thought that it could be done. And I was kind of trying to figure out who would be first or last. And then I became a little disappointed when I realized I wasn't going to sing at all.
Oh, so how lovely of you to admit that. So there was an enthusiasm to sing. And interestingly, you were thinking about two things. You were thinking about the singing, what you would sing, trying to think it'll be Jack and Jill. And then also you had some thoughts that were triggered by the fact that you're a bit hoarse at the moment, and that might impact on your singing. And your general feeling despite that was that nice feeling of I'd enjoy singing, and I'm sorry that you feel disappointed now that you didn't get your chance to sing. So can you start to see how Brenda and Donna Marie both have had a set of thoughts about singing, emotions about the idea of singing, some reference to, in Donna Marie's case, what her throat has been feeling like because she's got this physical sensation of hoarseness, and their behavior of immediately coming forward thinking they're going to volunteer. And there are 100 of us, and 2 people were really keen to sing. Maybe some of you were, okay, I'll do it if I have to. Who really thought this is the worst thing? I might have to have an excuse to leave now. Anne Marie, tell us what it was like for you.
I had never heard that tune before in my life. And I can't remember any nursery rhymes, so I was just thinking all I can think of is the Canadian ABCDE, and I'm just gonna sing that. So I'm gonna throw everyone off. And I can feel it right now. I can feel the pit in my heart, the anxiety. It's swelling, and I turned off my camera and I couldn't pick up a tune. All I heard was just noises. No offense to anyone singing, but I just heard noises and I was very overwhelmed and overstimulated.
Anne-Marie, thank you so much for telling us that. So here's another example of somebody whose thoughts now are horrified. I don't know this tune. What's going to go on? How can I even work out the tune? Because everybody's voices are coming through at different times. And then that sense in the pit of your stomach, so your physical sensations being driven by that sense of anxiety and dread from the thoughts of, I can't believe I'm really being asked to do this. So they're kind of mirror examples compared with the people who spoke to you, spoke about being willing to sing, aren't they? So thank you for debriefing with me. I'm going to go back to the slides now because I've got a slide that is a kind of summary of all of the other people I've tortured with this same exercise down the years, just so you don't feel alone. So I ask a group of people to sing, and these are highly professional people. They know how to do a job. They're really good at their jobs. They're confident people. And what happens to them is really quite extraordinary. That they have thoughts about how terrible it's going to be, how foolish they're going to feel. They think about their voice. I'll get the tune wrong. I'll sing it badly. I'm hoarse. They look for ways to escape. When I do this in a room with people, because I am that mean and I do it in a room with people, I see everybody looking at the floor and looking at the ceiling, and everybody's avoiding eye contact with me, trying to find a way out. And when we debrief people about the kind of emotions they're feeling a little bit alarmed about it all. Some people are feeling quite anxious at the idea of singing. Some people flash back to having a horrible time in singing lessons in school and things like that. And some people just get this feeling that Anne-Marie described of dread and the kind of physical sensations that we associate with dread, with like that feeling in the pit of your stomach, or getting palpitations or a dry mouth. When I did this with a group of CBT first aid trainees a couple of weeks ago online, somebody said that she was just suddenly very, very conscious of her throat feeling as though it was closing, even though nothing had happened other than I had said, I'm going to ask you to sing. So she realized that it was a sensation that was because of her imagination rather than something happening in her throat. And then these behaviors of trying to work out what to do, giggling in disbelief, avoiding eye contact, or getting ready to sing behaviors, testing your breath, clearing your throat, or when we've got a couple of people in the same room, they'll say to each other, can we do it together so that I don't have to sing on my own? So kind of finding ways to cope. The other thing that's interesting about what everybody's just said, and if we debriefed everybody, we get something slightly different and some things that overlap, is that there's a set of thoughts that flick into people's minds straight away. And we call those automatic thoughts. The first thing that leaps into our mind and it drives the emotions and it stimulates the physical sensations and it directs the behaviors. And we haven't really even thought about that thought before we're doing and feeling the things that thought drives. And then we have a second thought, a second set of thoughts. So for Brenda and Donna Marie, those second set of thoughts were about, oh, I think she isn't going to ask us to sing. How disappointing. Whereas for Anne-Marie, it was, oh, it's okay, I don't have to do it. That's all right then. And some of you might even have had that second thought before I'd started to say we're not all going to sing. Some of you might have thought, no, hang on. She's trying to teach us about that model, isn't she? This is just an exercise. I'm not going to have to sing. And as we get the second set of thoughts, the kind of rational set of thoughts, the difficult emotions then start to fade away as we get a little bit of a grip on the situation. And we've done this exercise together. And thank you so much for joining in with it, doing it together, to show you really that this is how the model works. And the model isn't about patience. The model is about human beings. This is just the way human beings are wired. So let's look together at a patient type example. So this is the story of Jacob, whose wife, Angeline, has been very severely limited by multiple sclerosis for quite some time now. And he's promised her that he will look after her. And despite his best care, she lost an enormous amount of weight. She developed pressure sores and she needs to be in hospital to get her skin to heal. And Jacob is just horrified that this has happened in his watch. He blames himself. He feels a failure. And he feels that, you know, he promised her and he hasn't come good on his promise. So again, I'd like you to use the chat to make some suggestions of what kinds of thoughts might be going through Jacob's mind, what kind of emotions Jacob might be feeling. And I'm going to tell you that he isn't visiting the hospital as much as the nurses had expected he might, but he's constantly phoning the ward to ask how she is and to remind them about the way she likes to be cared for. So those are the behaviors that he's exhibiting. So would you like to suggest some kind of thoughts that you might expect you would find if you were talking to Jacob, and some kind of emotions that he might be experiencing? And I'm going to open the chat on my screen here to see what's saying. So what kind of thoughts, what kind of emotions? So what's she going to think about now? You know, sense of worry and a sense of helplessness, regrets about not doing more, even though he thinks he did everything he could. I've let her down. Fear and failure. I just can't be reminded of how I failed her. Janice, that's a really lovely thought, because it's the sort of thought that would make somebody not visit, isn't it? So that thought might underlie that behavior of not visiting. Fear for what's going to happen to her, disappointment in himself, perhaps. Or perhaps, and this is another important thought, Kathryn, she's in a better place now. She's got proper professional nurses. They can do it better than I could. And then that sense of, or even thoughts about, I've just lost control of the situation. And now she's in hospital. I've lost my role and my identity, which is being her devoted husband and carer. Feeling guilty about how uncomfortable she's feeling. So you might feel guilty. You might feel a failure. You might feel ashamed to visit or embarrassed this has happened. Robin, I'm going to stop on this one for a moment, because you picked some great things and I want to try and put them into boxes, because one of the things that's really difficult when you're first learning this set of techniques is to work out which things go in what boxes. And what I always say to people when they're first starting out is just write it confidently in the wrong box for now. You can sort it out later. So guilt would be an emotion, and usually emotions are a single word. Whereas I feel that I failed her. I am a failure. That's a sentence and that's a thought. So he may feel ashamed. So shame would be the emotion, or embarrassment would be the emotion. And thoughts that would go with those might be something like, shame might be, I should have done better. I completely let her down. I'm not the man that she thought I was. I haven't fulfilled my promise to her. And embarrassment might be something like the nurses will think that I haven't cared for her enough. I haven't looked after her skin properly. They'll think I don't care. They think I haven't been trying. So that's really helpful to have several things in the same box there of yours, Robin, to try and separate them out into the different boxes they go into in the model. It's really like that if you feel totally lost and there's a thought and it's emotion. I didn't keep my promise as the thought and feeling guilty because of that, sadness and anger, which are emotions. You could be feeling shame. Failure, I am a failure. It's a label, so that's a thought. I should do more, I could do more, I wish I'd done more would be thoughts. Exhaustion would be one of the physical sensations. So it's likely, look, you've got fantastic, look at all the experience that's coming through in this thread. Thanks, everybody. These are absolutely fantastic interpretations. Joseph, thank you for the question, because when people ask a question, very often it's the answer that they give themselves to the question that is the unbearable thought. So why is life so unfair is almost a kind of railing against fate, railing against God, isn't it? But sometimes you'll have people who say, am I going to get better? If the answer that they gave themselves to that question was yes, then they wouldn't be worrying. They're worrying because they think they're not going to get better, but the thought is so scary that they pose it as a question rather than talking about it with an answer. These are really, really rich ideas. Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to give you now the slide that I have made, which is a kind of synthesis of these things, because as you can see, we can't know, can we? The only way that we can know is by asking Jacob and listening to his answers. And so this next slide, there's the hot cross bun again. I've made it bigger and I've removed the arrows just to make space for more things. I've got two possible scenarios here and I'm combining them on the same slide. So the situation is that Evangeline has been admitted to hospital. So that's the first of the 5 areas and the 5 areas maybe. And I've got two different sets of thoughts here. One is about I've let her down, I've failed her, I'm losing control, she will have lost control. And another one, which is a different version of Jacob, because we have to ask him to know, is I'm not coping, I haven't coped, she'd be better off in hospital, I'm a terrible person, I've let her down. So one of these sets of thoughts is very likely to be associated with the feeling of guilt and sadness and anxiety about the loss of control. Whereas the other set of thoughts are very likely to be associated with sadness, but that relief that she's in hospital and being properly looked after, and then the guilt about feeling relieved that she's in hospital and shame about the situation. So I've listed some potential physical sensations for this very tired and emotionally battered elderly man. And here are the behaviors. So frequent visiting because he feels he's let her down and he's trying to make it up to her, and phone calls to check. And when he's at home, not being able to settle, pacing, worrying, ruminating, anxiety type behaviors. Or the guilty, ashamed, and yet relieved that she's safe now version of a man who's weeping, avoiding visiting because he's ashamed. And he's sitting at home telling himself off, negative self-talk, you're a terrible husband, she should never have married you, should have been better off with a different husband, you've let her down. And all of this, of course, churning through his body, lots of adrenaline, lots of cortisol. So he's already exhausted and very tired from looking after her, but he may now also get other symptoms that are related really to being anxious and exhausted, but he may now present to his doctor as though he is physically sick, when his symptoms are actually the symptoms of somebody who's just emotionally highly distressed. And lots of those things came up, and in fact, much better suggestions came up in your suggestions in the chat box. So I'm going to take a quick pause there while we just have a think with each other about, are there any questions or anything that you want to check before we move on with the next bit of the, I'm going to say the evening, but I don't know what it is for most of you. It's only breakfast time for Sally. It's past my bedtime. So, questions or comments or things that you would like to clarify before we move on?
I think we're good to keep going, Kathryn, as we don't have a lot of
Okay.
time and I don't see anything popping up.
Okay. So, what we thought we'd do to engage you now is that Sally has very kindly offered to discuss with me a particular dilemma that's a real dilemma for her at home at the moment. And when I was briefing her, I asked her, so if you want to play with this back in your workplace, and you're very welcome to do that, part of the briefing is to try out this skill set with somebody with a real life dilemma that they've got, but it has to be a really not very big dilemma. Because if you try to do something that's about something that's really anxiety provoking, really overwhelming for them, you won't really get a chance to practice the skills because you'll be too concerned about the massive dilemma that you've just unleashed. And really, for the purposes of practicing, this isn't really about Sally. This is about the practicing of the skills. So we need to help each other to stay safe by choosing something, that's, as simple as, I'm a bit stressed out because I've been asked to choose the staff birthday present for our boss. That's about as big as we want it to get. So Sally and I are going to have a discussion, and I only know vaguely what it is she's going to talk about. And we'd like to invite you to try to notice as she's saying things, is that thought? Is it an emotion? Is it a physical sensation? Is it a behavior? Is it a thing she's doing or a thing that she's avoiding doing? Can you pop that in the chat? And we're going to use a very particular style of listening. I'm going to do a question summary waltz. So I'm going to ask Sally a question, then I'm going to ask her another question, and then I'm going to try and give her a summary at least every 2, 3, 4 questions, something like that, in order that those little summaries check that I'm on the right page with her. Also, they're little place markers for how far we've got so far. So I'm just looking in my dots to find the chat because all of my icons have changed around, so I can keep an eye on the chat as it, oh, there it is. It's appeared again. So Sally, thank you for agreeing to be my collaborator. I was going to say victim then.
Thank you.
Collaborator.
Guinea pig, here we go.
So guinea pig, would you like to just sketch in a few sentences what is the dilemma you have chosen for us to chat about?
Well, my husband and I have lived in an old house for a long time, and it's time to actually update our cooktop or our stovetop because it's a gas stovetop and it's starting to muck up on us. So it's time to decide what to replace it with.
So this is the stovetop in your kitchen in the
Yes.
house. We're not talking about
In the
some
kitchen.
fancy outdoor grill area like you
Goodness,
Australians
no.
have.
No.
Okay. So we're in your kitchen.
We're in the
We're in your
kitchen. We use it
kitchen
every
and you're-
single day. Yes. And
Okay.
we've got both gas and electric attached to the house. And so now it's that, what do we stay with gas because that's not renewable, or do we go electric? And if we go electric, do we want induction? But does that mean we have to replace all our saucepans because it has to be inducted? And then of course there's the cost. So yeah, it's actually don't really want to face this one. I just I've got other things that are more important at the moment, so I just don't want to face this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just as a matter of interest, for how long now have you been not facing this one?
Oh, I'd say for a good 18 months, because the one we've got at the moment, our gas one, the spark has gone and we now have to light it with a little lighter. So that's when my husband first said, We're going to have to start thinking about replacing this.
Oh, okay. So my next sort of questions were going to be about whether this is a kind of house-proud housewife thing, and you're on your own thinking about it. What's the family reaction to what's going on in the kitchen?
Well, my husband's the cook in the family, so he's the one that's driving that we need a new one, whereas I'm the finance person in the family, and I'm the one that says, look, let's just keep using this one until we have to actually get one. So it doesn't bother me what we get, except for I do want to think about the environment and, what's the best thing, but also what can we actually afford and when can we actually afford this. So he's already looked up on the internet the many wonderful, expensive, fancy pants, electric, press a button and it does everything for you, whereas I'm just like practical. Let's just get what we need to replace what we got.
Okay, so if I got this right, there is a working well enough but gradually starting to fail gas stove thing happening at the moment, with pans that match it, work on it. So you've got a whole system that works but is getting old.
Yes.
And the person who does the cooking or enjoys doing the cooking?
Well, both now. He does both. Yes.
But he does it and he enjoys it. He doesn't do it as a kind of penance. So he likes to cook. It's a pleasure for him.
Yes.
And he's keen for not just a replacement, but your words were fancy pants replacement. Yeah. And then I've heard you say, but I do the money and I'm just a bit concerned about the expense of it. And also coming through are your wishes to do something that's renewable, that's good for the planet as well. Okay.
Yep, that's right. Yep.
So when you sit to think it through, and then you decide that actually we don't need to do it yet, we're not going to do it for a while, is that a kind of oh well, it's just one of those things, I put it to one side? Or is there a sense of, each time I think about this, feel a little bit more distressed about thinking about it?
I do get a little bit more turned up, and I think that might be that, like, even sitting here now, I can feel inside just sort of like that, because I don't really want to have an argument about this. And I do think that, look, it's still working, so let's just put it off. We don't need to address this right now, really, truly. We really just don't. We just don't need to do this.
Okay, so this is starting now to sound like it's not just about the stove top.
Oh, maybe it isn't.
And I'm curious about whether the reason it isn't getting sorted out is because it isn't one person's to sort out, and it's going to require some kind of negotiation to reach the point where a decision can be made. Is that?
Yeah.
Am I hearing that right?
Yeah. It's like, I don't want to have the fight.
Oh, the fight. So you already know how the conversation is going to go.
Yeah, I don't want to have the fight.
Okay. So I am going to take a pause at that point to ask the audience what you've noticed about not so much what Sally is saying, but the way I'm asking her about it. What is happening? What am I not doing that you want me to do? Have you all got an idea in your head of what you think she should do? Because I've got several ideas in my head of what I think she should do. And part of the rules of the question summary waltz game are that we I'm not going to give any advice. We are going to hold our advice monster in check and help her to think it through. So, am I managing to do summaries every several questions? It's really hard to remember when you're doing it for real.
I feel like I'm nodding a lot.
Okay. So people are commenting on mirroring and active listening and gently trying to clarify the scenario and invite you to think about it more deeply. And somebody's noticed your behavior of avoidance and is asking the question that I'm asking myself, which is, are you avoiding stoves or are you avoiding emotions? Okay, so shall we regroup? Okay, so to regroup, would you like to summarize back for us what you think we've established so far?
Are you asking me to do that, Kathryn? Sorry.
I am.
Okay, so I need, well, every now and then the issue of our stovetop comes up and I just want to avoid it because I don't want to have the discussion about it because actually I think that we're going to disagree on it. And I don't want to do that.
And do you think you've been aware that you're going to disagree about it all this time? Or do you think you've just been avoiding thinking about it till now?
I know, I suppose it's just another decision that it's just going to be another fight.
So, if you had a friend who described to you the situation that you've just described to me, what advice would you give that friend?
Gosh. Okay, so that's a really good question. And one of them would be, well, straight away, is this something you actually have to make a decision about right now with everything else that's going on in your life? And maybe even asking, what is it that upsets you the most about thinking and talking about this or something like that?
Okay. So if you were to take the advice that you've just given your friend,
Yes.
how would you answer those questions for yourself?
Yeah, I'd probably realise that it's actually got nothing really to do with the stovetop or whether we get solar on the roof or how I do the gardening or whether I cook or not. It's about the relationship and how I communicate with my husband and how sometimes I feel like he railroads me and therefore will get what he wants and financially I'll just have to be the one that works out how to do that. But then also under that, there's that small disappointment that I can't give him what he wants because we just can't afford it.
So when you have a disagreement about spending on something, happens to be a stovetop right now, you're in two positions in the argument. You're trying to hold the financial line, and you're also wanting to find a way to fulfill something that means a lot to him.
Exactly.
Okay, so you must feel that you're being pulled in two directions.
Yeah. I feel like I can't win. You know, if we buy what he wants, I'll have given him what he wants, but then I'll get all worried about money. And if we don't do it, then I've got to put up with a grumpy husband.
And
there we
just
go.
before we finish, leaving you with a grumpy husband,
yes.
I'm curious about how much of that inner struggle that is tearing at you inside, I'm curious about how much of that he actually knows about.
Ooh, that's a really good question too. And he probably doesn't. He probably doesn't know about it because I probably haven't said it out loud.
So what do you make of that?
I don't know. I'll have to give that one a lot more thought.
Should we leave you with that to ponder about?
Absolutely. And I need to make a disclaimer that my husband does love me very much and we do get on. So anybody listening, I've exaggerated this a bit. So thank you.
Thank you for telling us about it. And
Mm.
are you okay that we've
Oh,
parked
yeah,
it?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And okay, and
I'm all
Sally
good.
and I are going to have a chat when everybody's
Yeah,
safe.
we'll debrief later. I've got my
So
tissues box ready. There we go.
we've got a couple of minutes to draw to the end of our session. So what did you notice?
I think that Carl, if you don't mind me saying, part of the problem isn't the replacement. It's avoiding what's perceived as a future action and not dealing with the underlying problem of the relationship and how we communicate. And I think that that's absolutely right. And other people have said the same.
Yeah. So this form of trying to see what are the thoughts, what are the behaviors. One of the things that I was interested in observing in Sally is that she could tell us the thoughts, the kind of processing of how expensive it's going to be or whether we're going to have an argument about it. But it was very interesting, wasn't it, watching her body language and seeing that it was much more distressing to talking about the stove than it was to talk about just the stove. So once she's talking to her husband about having a conversation in which they're going to be at odds, there was much more emotion there. So what we needed to do was give her the space to be able to think about that. And then to notice that actually there were two lots of emotions going on in Sally at the same time. There's this desire to look after everybody by not overspending the family's budget and a kind of anxiety about that. And then there's a sadness and a disappointment of not being able to offer this thing at the same time. So different emotions that have got different thoughts driving them that are probably associated with physical sensations that I didn't get a chance to talk to her about. And it's all presenting as a behavior of avoiding a conversation. So not about the stove at all, which is why we always ask people to choose a really, really superficial problem, because superficial problems, even they aren't problems unless there's something else going on underneath them. Sally, thank you very, very much for doing that with us. So I think we've got 2 minutes left and it's probably time to just round up. So Jane, is there anything that you would like us to do as we're coming to a close?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you, Kathryn, for getting us thinking and experiencing this listening and possibilities for how we can do that with each other, what to think about as we do that. So I think we'll all go away pondering and listening to other people in new ways. Yeah.
Right. Well, that's our intention for the evening, isn't it? I don't know. This has come on the wrong slide. Hang on. Let me just. And then stuck.
Whilst you find your slide, Kathryn, I will just say that, yes, people have noticed that I looked away from the screen when I was thinking and pondering about something that was different, but I'm really happy to be looking straight at you to talk about electric. But yeah.
Yes,
That
thank you
well
everyone
picked
for all
up,
the
everybody.
comments.
Yes.
Yes.
I had a
Very
summary slide that was the skills that I was hoping people might pick up, but for some reason,
it doesn't
divine
want to come.
intervention is stopping us from getting to it. So
Well, you can keep working on it if, in case it comes up, while I just give some closing remarks, and then if it does pop up, all the better. But I do just want to thank you again, Kathryn, and thank everyone for joining us. This was the final webinar in this Encore series that was rooted in our 2023 International Conference. And so we're going to take a bit of a break for now, but we are considering what it might look like going forward, whether we might be able to put together another 6-month series next year. If you have a suggestion of a presentation that you have seen or that you have done that you think might be of interest to this audience, we would like to hear about it because we might be able to give it an encore opportunity. So please be in touch if you have a suggestion. When we send out the recording of this webinar, we will also send a link that will give you a form that gives you opportunity to provide some feedback and ideas for the future. So I think that's about all I have to say. We see lots of thank yous coming for Kathryn. We really appreciate you taking this time, especially at your bedtime and far from home, to be with us and just share yourself and your insights with us. And we wish you all the very best in your continued work. Especially this week is remind me, is it Death Matters Week? I forget the name of it.
It's Dying Matters Week
Dying
this week in
Matters
the
Week.
United Kingdom, and I think Australia is having National Hospice Week, is it next week? So good luck to all of you down there for that. Thank you all
Wonderful.
for coming.
Yeah, thank you all. And I will send out an invitation as well to our next event is an in-person event here at Grable. And you'll receive information about that. It's called From Problems to Possibilities, Faith Communities Enabling Those in the Third of Life to Flourish. So feel free to join us for that either online or in person if you would like to. Many blessings to you all as you go about your work and your lives wherever you are in this world. Take good care all. Goodbye.